So in this segment, we're going to switch gears about here, which is the UK government promises confidentiality for Putin allies fighting the sanctions. So the government has promised Putin's cronies total privacy if they launch a legal bid to be removed from the UK sanction list. And we don't know all of the Russians on the sanction list. Some of them still own property in the UK via offshore trusts and other dodgy financial entities, which shows you how broken the system is in the UK and how infected the UK is with dodgy money. The Foreign Office said it would be a breach of confidence to name the Russians trying to have their sanctions overturned or the law firms representing them. And whose confidence? This shows we don't know the full list, which we really should be public. So we don't know who's being sanctioned, and by knowing that we don't know. Sorry, we don't have a list, so we don't know who is being sanctioned and who isn't. But to go beyond that and say the unknown ones can effectively have censored or hidden court cases is wild. But Open Democracy can reveal, and this is who the source is on this one, that one such individual is Alisher Usmanov, who, if you follow football, I think he's one of the partial owners of Everton Football Club, the billionaire former club sponsor, who was sanctioned last year when the British government accused him of having, quote, close links to the Kremlin. A spokesperson for Usmanov, who made his fortune through Russian mining company, has confirmed he's deployed legal teams to try and reverse the move. Uzmanov and his relatives have already started challenging the sanctions imposed on them, which they justifiably consider unfair and unsubstantiated. The spokesperson said all legal means are currently being implemented to achieve this. That's coming from one of his spokespeople. His case was public, and and we knew he was being sanctioned, and clearly he's trying to fight the sanctions, but I think he managed to get a lot of his money out of the UK because we were so slow to sanction him. Responding to a Freedom of Information request from Open Democracy, the Foreign Office refused to say which Russian individuals had submitted legal applications to be removed from the sanction list, which was expanded in the wake of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Officials also refused to reveal whether any of those fighting the sanctions are being assisted in their legal battles by UK-based firms. And most likely these will be UK-based firms, given that it will be in UK-based courts. Asking EU-based firms would not make sense, because if they're on the UK list, sanction list, they're probably on the EU one. But the UK has sanctioned more Russian officials, I think, than the EU has. Not by much, though. So they would not be able to use EU-based firms, so there's more red tape there. In contrast, appeals against EU sanctions are recorded publicly. Reports say that multiple sanctioned Russians have employed legal teams to fight against the imposition of international sanctions, and it shows you, how different the UK and the EU are. They can fight their cases, but as the war rages on, they will struggle to justify why they should not be on the sanction list. Some of these dons are close to Mad Vlad and made their wealth either because of him directly or because he left them alone. They include Usmanov, or Usmanov may not necessarily be included in that. But Usmanov has filed an appeal last year to remove EU sanctions, which prevent him from accessing assets in member states or travelling across the continent. His bid so far has not been successful. In June, Open Democracy also uncovered how Usmanov managed to sell his stake in a London mansion less than a fortnight before he was added to the sanction list, the UK sanction list. Usmanov's stake was transferred legally to his Russian business empire, meaning he could potentially still profit from his British assets. And it could be the case that he saw what was coming, or he was tipped off that he was going to be on the list. But the fact that some of these sanctioned people can still profit off the UK shows how broken the system is. Last week, Open Democracy also revealed that the UK government allowed another Putin ally, Evgeny Prigozhin, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and Evgeny Prigozhin, and this guy, he's absolutely nasty work, to override the sanctions against him in order to launch a legal attack on a British journalist. And this is a case which is mind-blowing. In 2022, during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it was reported that Prigozhin travelled to the Donbass to oversee personally the Wagner Group's campaign. He was pictured wearing a military fatigues with Russian Duma member Vitaly Milanov, who had travelled to the front line. And I don't know how high up this guy is in the Wagner Group, but for him to personally fly out to check the progress means he must be high up there, probably feeding info directly to Putin as their boys, and Putin does not trust many people. This guy has also been known as Putin's chef, because he organises dinners between Putin and other kind of top Russian officials and business lobbyist interests. A British legal firm called Discreet Law, which is very appropriately named, obtained special license from a department within the Treasury, allowing it to receive payments from Prigozhin. This meant that he could sue Elliot Higgins, the founder of investigative journalism website Bellingcat, which had published stories about Prigozhin. There are big questions here, lots of them. Sunak was in charge of the Treasury at the time, as why he allowed the sanctions or a sanctioned person to have access to their funds to sue a journalist. These sorts of suits are aimed at bankrupting people. That's the point of them. America has, I think, the phrase slap suits. Legal fees are expensive to the less wealthy person, so the less wealthy person inherently suffers more. And given the fact that this is a Russian oligarch versus a British journalist, one person is going to be vastly richer than the other. Hunt claims he's looking into, he's looking into the case, but he's looking into his boss man. So I doubt he'll ask too many questions. Email seen by Open Democracy shows that Prigozhin believed a legal victory against Higgins would discredit the allegations made against him, strengthening his bid to remove the sanctions. So this was a bigger play to discredit the journalist than if he won that case. He would say that the further evidence against him is bogus, the ones that the British government have used. The fact that the UK allowed this shows how easily it is to play us, but also how much the Tories don't care about investigative journalism, because they allowed one to be sued, and they, in a way, went out of their way to allow this to happen, which is genuinely terrifying. Treasury officials signed off on a series of costs for discrete law relating to the case, including business class flights to Prigozhin's lawyers to St. Petersburg so they could meet face to face and finalise their legal attack on Higgins. And I don't know what happened with this case, actually. Might be worth researching in the future for me. The Labour Party described the move as completely unacceptable and called for the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, to investigate Open Democracy's revelations. And Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak should be dragged in front of select committees for this and asked exactly what the hell was going on here. This should be a public inquiry, because corruption seems to be at the heart of this. Because why else would you do this? Why allow this to happen? Did they think that he would not sue the journalist? What did they think was going on here? And then allowing flights to Russia for the lawyers to meet when the sanctioned Russian was not needed. These flights were not needed because we have the internet. You can meet over video. So for all of this, right, this is absolutely infuriating that this situation has occurred. The situation with Prigozhin and Usmanov, everything here should be public. The list should be public. Any legal challenges against the list should be public, so you know exactly what the hell's going on, and it lowers the chance of any corruption happening here. But for this specific case with Evgeny Prigozhin, this should absolutely be looked at, and Jeremy Hunt has a lot of questions to answer, but also Rishi Sunak and potentially Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was potentially aware of this stuff. Absolutely terrifying. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.